The Pima County Sheriff's Department shutting down a Catalina Foothills neighborhood in connection to the Nancy Guthrie investigation. It is all happening near Orange Grove and First Avenue, and Placita de Graciela and Camino de Michael are now closed down.
Day 58. No arrest. No named suspect. No confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie since the night of January 31st. Law enforcement has not held a press conference in over a month. And while that silence has frustrated a lot of people following this case, retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Lance Lysing offered a different way to read it. He said he would like to be hopeful that the silence is because they are on to something. That is not wishful thinking from a family member. That is a career federal investigator reading the behavior of his former colleagues. Here is the sentence this episode is built around. 7 words from a retired FBI special agent, given on the record to a national news outlet. The plan was not to hurt her. We are not explaining that yet. Sit with it. What this episode is going to answer is this. What was the plan actually designed to do? And what destroyed it the moment it made contact with reality? This episode contains discussion of abduction and investigative evidence covered responsibly and without graphic detail. If you are not subscribed to Fatal Files, you are 9 episodes behind on this case. Hit subscribe now. Every development, every expert analysis, every investigative shift, it is all here. And drop a comment telling us where in the world you are watching from tonight. Andrew Bringwell did not stumble into this case. He spent his career inside the FBI working violent crime and abduction cases, and when this case broke he sought it out independently. He reviewed the evidence, studied the surveillance footage, and then sat down with Newsweek with a professional assessment that has not received the attention it deserves. His read was direct. The intent was to kidnap Nancy Guthrie, not to assault her, not to kill her. Something went wrong. Violence occurred. She was injured. But she was not killed. Kidnapping has an operational logic. The target must remain alive and in a condition that makes a negotiation or exchange worth completing. When violence occurs on the porch of a planned abduction, it is not the plan succeeding. It is the plan failing. Bringwell also addressed the gun. It was present. It was loaded. It was accessible. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old, alone, and taken by surprise. If ending her life was the goal, nothing about that situation made it complicated. He had every tool required. He did not use them for that purpose. That absence of action is one of the most significant data points in this entire case. Now here is the tension. Former FBI Special Agent Harry Trombitas offered a read that complicates the ransom framework. He stated that the ransom motive is looking less and less likely, because ransom kidnappings involve too many ways to get caught, and because they have declined significantly in the United States over decades. He is not saying a kidnapping did not occur. He is saying the ransom explanation may not be the complete picture. The question this episode is working toward is not simply what happened on that porch. It is what the plan was built to accomplish, and what destroyed it before it could get there. The doorbell camera at Nancy Guthrie's home was a Google Nest device with no active cloud subscription. Under normal circumstances that means no recoverable footage. The FBI did not accept that answer. Their technical teams extracted residual data from the back-end systems and recovered a visual record that by standard logic should not have existed. That recovery gave investigators what they did not have in the first hours. A documented record of the man who came to that porch. Read correctly, that footage is not just evidence of a crime. It is a behavioral document revealing the suspect's internal state before anything went wrong. Brianna Fox, former FBI agent and criminology professor at the University of South Florida, described his movement with precision. She said he almost saunters up like that is his house. Sauntering is not nervousness. It is the physical expression of someone who has already decided how a situation ends. He had built a mental picture of what was about to happen, and nothing in that picture alarmed him. Former FBI agent Mark Hurian, who led the Bureau's firearms training program, focused on the weapon. It was holstered at the front of the body in an inexpensive off-brand holster, tactically unsound for anyone trained in weapons use. His read, the gun was not configured for use. It was configured for display. It was positioned so she would see it immediately and understand that resistance was not rational. Weaver Barkman, a 26-year Pima County Sheriff's Department investigator turned crime scene reconstructionist, identified the key contradiction. The suspect dressed with genuine forensic precision, mask, gloves, full body coverage, yet improvised on the camera using yard vegetation. That gap reveals exactly where his confidence sat. He planned carefully for the aftermath of a clean exit. He did not plan for complications mid-operation because in his version of this plan, there were none. He was rehearsing success, not failure. One additional detail created friction inside the investigation. FBI Director Kash Patel released surveillance images via his personal social media account rather than official FBI channels. Local investigators had hoped to keep details of one specific image confidential. That ability was removed the moment it went public. The image in question, showing the man without a backpack or firearm, was believed by Tucson investigators to be from weeks before the abduction, not from February 1st. That image is where the next chapter begins. The image Patel released showing the figure without a backpack or firearm did not sit right with Tucson investigators because they did not believe it was taken on February 1st. The Guthrie family's public statement named a specific date. They asked neighbors, businesses, and anyone with a security camera in the Catalina Foothills to search their footage and memories from the evening of January 11th, between 9 p.m. and midnight. That is not a general appeal. That is a precise date and time window named by a family working directly with investigators. When that happens in an active federal case, it means someone with knowledge of the evidence told them that date matters. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed to KOLD that investigators now believe something may have happened at the home weeks before the disappearance. He acknowledged the image could not be definitively tied to January 11th through metadata alone, but the investigative posture around that date, the family statement, the specific canvassing requests, the time window, signals law enforcement is treating it seriously regardless. Former FBI agent Kendra Coffin-Daffer explained why that matters. Returning to a target's home weeks before an abduction is a high-risk move. If he had been spotted on January 11th by a neighbor or a passing camera, the February 1st abduction likely never happens. He took that risk anyway. That tells you he was comfortable in that neighborhood. He knew the area well enough to believe he could move through it undetected. He had studied her long enough to know when to come back. For the suspect profile, January 11th is significant. This was not impulsive. Someone identified Nancy Guthrie as a target, assessed her home and routine, returned weeks later to confirm what he had already decided, and came back on February 1st with a prepared plan. That premeditation sits in direct tension with grabbing a plant to cover the camera. He prepared for some things with precision. He did not prepare for others at all. That gap is exactly what the next chapter of this investigation turns on. The physical evidence at Nancy Guthrie's home tells a forensic story, and if you follow it carefully it does not point where most people assumed in the early days of this case. Start with the blood. Retired FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell analyzed the crime scene photographs and focused on one specific finding: the absence of voids. In blood pattern analysis, voids are the negative spaces created when a body or object interrupts falling blood. Standing produces voids from the feet. Being dragged produces directional smearing with momentum. O'Connell found neither. What she found was consistent with a person who was stationary, not moving under her own power, and then lifted. Her conclusion: Nancy Guthrie was wrapped and carried out. Carrying is management behavior. She still had value. She was not a problem to remove, she was an asset being transported. A forensic pathologist examining the blood drops separately found pale centers and a donut-shaped morphology consistent with blood expelled through respiration, not from a wound. Those drops are the physical record of a person who was breathing when they formed. She was alive on that porch. On DNA, the blood confirmed as Nancy's was expected. What followed was not. Gloves recovered approximately 2 miles from the home carried DNA from an unknown male. That profile did not match anyone in CODIS, the FBI's National Criminal Database. Investigators then shifted to genetic genealogy, the same methodology used to identify the Golden State Killer, searching public databases for distant relatives who might lead back to the suspect. Separately, investigators attempted to track Nancy's location through her pacemaker. That effort did not yield usable results. The physical evidence trail. The backpack was identified through Walmart as a 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker pack. The holster type is under investigation through local gun stores. The back doors of the home were found propped open. Nancy was taken in her pajamas. No shoes, no medication. Additional cameras covering the backyard, side yard, and pool area were reviewed. Investigators saw family members, landscapers, and pool workers across weeks of footage. The suspect appears on none of them. He knew which camera to approach and which to avoid. That is not luck. That is knowledge of the property. Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Lance Lysing offered a frank assessment. The absence of meaningful new leads points to a case becoming significantly harder to advance with each passing week. Time narrows the window in which physical evidence can be acted upon. If this level of investigative detail is what brought you to this channel, every episode of Fatal Files goes exactly this deep. Subscribe now so you do not miss what comes next in this case. The forensic picture is not complete. The DNA results are still moving. And the next development in this investigation will be covered here the moment it breaks. In the days after the disappearance, ransom communications began arriving and investigators had to move quickly to separate what was real from what was not. The first letter reached KOLD-TV on February 2nd, one day after the abduction. It contained specific details about the interior of Nancy Guthrie's home and what she was wearing the night she disappeared. That information was not publicly available at the time. Investigators asked the station not to disclose the contents, and KOLD complied. That letter was taken seriously. Then the noise started. A man traced to Los Angeles sent fraudulent demands to the Guthrie family, timed precisely to the moment Savannah Guthrie posted a video asking for proof of life. Investigators traced the messages to a Gmail account registered to him and confirmed they were sent from his Los Angeles home. He was charged and released on conditions. He was not the abductor. He had no connection to the crime. TMZ also received a cryptocurrency demand and forwarded it directly to the FBI. Savannah Guthrie addressed the ransom communications in her interview with Hoda Kotb. She said most of the notes were not credible. But the 2 letters the family publicly responded to, she tends to believe those are real. 2 genuine notes. 2 deadlines passed by February 9th. No exchange completed. Whatever negotiation the plan intended never reached its conclusion. Former FBI Special Agent Harry Trombitas does not contradict the existence of genuine notes, but he raises a harder question. Whether ransom was ever the real objective, or whether it was a layer placed on top of something else entirely. That question does not have a confirmed answer. But it is the one investigators are pressing on hardest right now. Every element built across this episode, the controlled abduction framework, the surveillance footage analysis, the January 11th visit, the forensic record, points toward one question that has not been answered publicly. Why did the plan fail? The answer the evidence points toward most consistently is the most human one possible. She recognized him. Start with the mask. Most coverage treats it as a disguise. That is correct but incomplete. In a controlled abduction built around leverage, the mask is the exit strategy. Nancy Guthrie's release, after a negotiation or exchange, depended entirely on her not knowing who took her. A released woman who can identify her abductor makes a phone call within minutes. That phone call ends everything. The mask was not there to hide a face during the crime. It was there to protect every clean path forward after it concluded. Remove its effectiveness and every option requiring her eventual release collapses simultaneously. Andrew Bringwell framed the violence as a consequence of something going wrong, not of the plan working. Johnny Gruing, who spent 25 years in the FBI's Denver division and led its behavioral analysis unit for 13 years, said it plainly. Whatever occurred inside that house was not what the suspect intended. He got in over his head. The violence was what happened when the design stopped working and he lacked the depth to manage the gap. The recognition theory explains what nothing else does as cleanly. The mask covered his face. It did not cover his voice, his build, his posture, or the physical vocabulary that accumulates in a body over years and that someone in close proximity learns to read without trying. Nancy Guthrie had lived in the Catalina Foothills for decades, long-standing neighbors, regular church attendance, deep community ties. If the person who came to that porch was someone she had known, the mask was always going to be insufficient. Not because it failed physically. Because some people cannot be made anonymous to someone who already knows them. Former FBI profiler Greg McCrary was direct. This was a targeted crime. The suspect did not arrive randomly. He knew where she lived, when she would be alone, and which window to choose. McCrary advised the public to think about anyone who showed unusual fixation on the Guthrie family, and anyone who made an excuse after February 1st to explain a sudden change in their routine. Savannah Guthrie told Hoda Kotb she cannot bear the thought that her own public prominence may have brought this to her mother's doorstep. Whether her visibility made Nancy a target is something investigators are actively working through. The behavioral consensus from Fox, Hurrian, Barkman, and Gruing is consistent. This was not a professional. This was someone who built a plan beyond his capacity to manage when it stopped working. And it stopped working the moment she recognized him, heard him, saw him move, felt the weight of a presence she already knew, and the mask became irrelevant. The analytical picture and the operational investigation are running on parallel tracks. Here is what is confirmed on the ground. The task force is 20 to 24 people, roughly half Pima County Sheriff's Department, half FBI. The FBI Phoenix Division manages the case from its Tucson field office. This is a federally anchored investigation with local partnership, not a local case with federal support. That distinction affects how resources are allocated and how decisions get made. On February 10th, a person of interest was detained in a traffic stop 60 miles south of Tucson in Rio Rico. A search warrant was executed on a property and vehicle. By February 11th, the search concluded. The individual, who identified himself as Carlos, was released without charges. Not connected to the disappearance. On February 13th, investigators conducted an operation at a residence 2 miles from the Guthrie home. 2 people were removed. Roads closed for 4 hours. No arrests. No charges. The FBI also returned to the neighborhood with specific questions about former residents who vacated shortly before the disappearance and about contractors and construction workers active on nearby homes in the weeks before February 1st. That line of inquiry connects directly to the January 11th theory. Someone with a legitimate reason to be in the neighborhood could observe Nancy Guthrie's home and routine without drawing attention. Thousands of hours of neighborhood surveillance footage were reviewed. U.S. Customs and Border Protection was briefed and placed on active watch. Mexican law enforcement was formally notified. Former FBI Special Agent James Hamilton noted the border protocol is a standard precaution given the geography, not a specific indication investigators believe she was taken across it. On February 18th, Google announced it was working to extract additional footage from cameras at the home beyond what was already recovered. Sheriff Nanos told NBC Nightly News that investigators believe they know why the home was targeted but declined to release the motive theory publicly. He confirmed the suspect could absolutely strike again. That statement was not walked back. The picture around the investigation then became more complicated, and it has nothing to do with the suspect. On March 12th, a recall campaign against Sheriff Nanos was launched by congressional candidate Daniel Gutierrez. Records then surfaced showing Nanos had been suspended 8 times at his former El Paso department, directly contradicting a deposition in which he stated he had never been suspended. On March 24th, the Pima County Board of Supervisors voted to invoke a rare territorial era law requiring him to submit reports under oath. His own department's union passed a unanimous no-confidence vote calling for his resignation. The federal side of this investigation operates with institutional independence from the sheriff's office. Whether the controversy has affected operational effectiveness has not been confirmed. What is confirmed is that the county's lead law enforcement official is managing serious institutional pressure while working one of the most high-profile missing person cases in the country. The reward picture is worth laying out clearly because the numbers reflect how seriously the urgency of finding Nancy Guthrie is being taken. The Guthrie family has offered $1 million for information leading to Nancy's safe recovery, not tied to an arrest, tied to bringing her home alive. The 88 crime tip line reached over $202,000 following a $100,000 anonymous donation. The FBI has a separate active reward of $100,000. These are independent incentives, not overlapping pools. The total financial motivation for someone with genuine information to come forward is substantial. The Guthrie family also announced a $500,000 donation to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, connecting this case to a broader commitment to families in similar situations. When the $1 million reward was announced, over 1,500 new tips arrived. Total tips to the FBI now exceed 13,000, each reviewed by threat intake examiners at the National Threat Operations Center around the clock. What actually breaks a case like this? Johnny Gruing has been direct in his public analysis. When Savannah Guthrie said on camera that it is never too late to do the right thing, those words were not simply a daughter speaking publicly. Gruing's read is that they were aimed with behavioral precision at a suspect profile, not hardened, not professional, carrying accumulating weight, watching the investigation tighten. Every reward announcement, every new episode, every public message is designed to press against that weight and make the one remaining path that ends without further harm feel more reachable than the alternative. Greg McCrary's post-abduction profile adds to this. The suspect almost certainly changed his routine after February 1st, made an excuse, altered patterns, explained away a gap. Someone in his life noticed that change and may not yet have connected it to what they now know. Harry Trombitas cut through to the essential point. The people most likely to break this open are not inside the FBI command post. They are ordinary people in Tucson and southern Arizona who noticed something around January 11th or January 31st and have not yet understood that what they noticed matters. If someone in your life has been behaving differently since February 1st, that detail matters. The FBI tip line is active around the clock. The number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The website is tips.fbi.gov. Every call is reviewed. Every detail is logged. The piece of information that breaks this case may already exist in someone's memory right now. Day 58. Here is where things stand. No arrests. No named suspect. No confirmed sighting since January 31st. Genetic genealogy analysis from the DNA on the recovered gloves is ongoing. The task force is active. Tips are reviewed daily. The investigation has not stopped. It has just stopped being loud. The Tucson community has visibly pulled back. Parking restrictions surround the home. Neighbors have asked media to cover the case from elsewhere. Savannah Guthrie has returned to New York. That quieting is understandable. It is not the same thing as the investigation going quiet. The expert consensus points consistently in one direction. Bringwell's assessment. The plan was designed for a living target and the violence was the consequence of it failing. The forensic record from the porch, O'Connell's blood pattern analysis and the pathologist's drop morphology findings supports that Nancy Guthrie was alive when she left. The behavioral record from Fox, Hurrian, Barkman, and Grewing points to a suspect who is not a professional and who has been living under accumulating psychological pressure since February 1st, the kind that does not hold indefinitely. McCrary says someone in his life has already noticed a change. Trombitas says the break will more likely come from an ordinary person with an ordinary observation. Lysing reads the law enforcement silence as a signal that something is moving beneath the surface. The Guthrie family said on March 21st, they cannot grieve. They can only ache and wonder. Their focus is solely on finding her and bringing her home. 4 things remain publicly unanswered. The motive. Nano says investigators know but will not release. Whether the January 11th image can be definitively dated. The genetic genealogy results. And whether a second person was involved, a question raised by the security gate experts say cannot be breached from outside, still unresolved in any public statement. Those are the threads Fatal Files will follow. Every new development in this case, the DNA results, the motive reveal, any arrest, will be covered on this channel first, completely and without letting go. Subscribe now so you are in the room when it happens. The evidence is moving even when the headlines are not. And this case is not over. The FBI tip line remains active around the clock. The number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The website is tips.fbi.gov. Nancy Guthrie deserves for this to end with her coming home. Her family deserves an answer. And the truth, wherever it leads, will be covered here.